Grand Rising.
Good morning, good morning.
How you doing today?
I'm good. This weather.
I get allergies. You get allergies?
No, and I don't want, I actually don't even want to talk about it with you. Because I feel like I don't want to, because
I'm going to pass it on?
Yeah, because it's like, no, people are getting allergies later in life. And I'm like, damn, I'm just,
different.
yeah.
Everything's just different.
Yeah.
My allergies kicking my behind. So if y'all see me looking a little different, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's horrible because it feels like a cold. Yeah.
A little under the weather.
Right.
But I'm happy to be here.
Me too.
Yeah,
So I'm happy to be here. This is going to be a good day.
You want to set it off?
So today our topic is about the difference in behavior from being single to being in committed relationships. So just sharing our opinions on what that looks like and keep going from there.
Yeah. I'm Mahogany.
I'm Ish.
And this is Culture Currency.
With culture
is the value. We're having a few relationship conversations. Our purpose is for the health of the culture, right? In order for us to get healthy, we got to get healthy in our households.
Yeah, man.
And so because of that, that's why we are tackling the subjects that we're tackling.
Beautifully said. Yeah, perfect.
I wanted to start off with the mindset.
Well, the mindset, I would say, is the umbrella to everything else that we're going to talk about. Because one thing I wanted to start off with is like from self-focus to sharing the focus on, you alongside your partner and their views and their feelings and stuff like that. So let's kick it off with that, because that's all mindset. And that's all relationships and the sustainability and the healthy relationships is really, it has a lot to do with mindset and shifting that. Shifting the mindset.
I'm happy you said that, because that's exactly what I said. I think we need to start with the mindset shift. So when we start thinking about going from single to a relationship, before you even enter the relationship, there has to be a mindset shift. Meaning make room, right? Consistently making room for the whole, not the one. So get rid of the independent and individuality conversation. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that you no longer are you.
Right.
When you get into a relationship, it's interdependent, right? So there's two people coming together and they are a healthy balance where both are connected and supportive of one another without losing sense of self.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I still hear a lot of people go into relationships with I'm an individual at the end of the day. I'm independent.
Right.
You don't have to make statements that are already known across the board. Like there's nobody that thinks that you're not an individual, right? But when you're going into a union, that mindset or that need to harp on that is divisive.
One thing you said was you got to shift that mindset before you get into the relationship. For me, that was extremely difficult, and I'm sure it's difficult for other people because we learn by doing. So getting in the relationship is when I learned, I got to make these different shifts, and I got to change in this way. But it also came with maturity, because even in the different relationships I've been in, I wasn't able always to change that mind shift, I guess, because I wasn't ready and didn't realize that's what a relationship entailed. And I wasn't mature enough to accept that level of responsibility of being in a committed relationship and all that it meant. You made a good point about maintaining personal identity, but even though that is important and you have to do that, you don't feel it should always have to be stated, because it could cause divisiveness, because you're right, that could be a mindset. But then sometimes people could be stating that because they may have lost their identity in relationships before. And a lot of times that happens. You get in relationships and then it's all about you and your partner, where it's like, what happened to your own hobbies? Or making time for your family and your friends. It's like everything is y'all two, and you kind of shut the whole world out for the duration of your relationship. You know what I mean? I can be for 10 years and I ain't seen my friend in 8.
I'm all about my mate. When I'm with somebody, that's my best friend. That's my,
you
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I go there. However, I never look at that ability to connect in that way as a losing of self. The only time I saw the losing of self was because I wasn't self-actualized at the moment. And because I wasn't self-actualized, I was giving up things that I didn't really want to give up.
Right.
I was changing things that I didn't want to change. And so I say all that just to say that when you feel like you're losing yourself, it's because a certain level of self understanding didn't happen prior to the relationship. Because you don't lose yourself in the right relationship. Right. Your partner is supposed to feed who you are.
Right.
And you're supposed to feed
and encourage
who they
it.
are.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So when you're in the right situation and you've already come to the conclusion of who you are, that doesn't happen. And if you've already come to the conclusion of who you are and are in the wrong relationship, you won't allow it to happen.
Right. Right. So what you described there is basically the notion that I'm sure many of us know is that, a healthy relationship is when two people who are at 100 themselves, ideally you want them to come together, and then that makes a 50-50. But a lot of times we're still figuring out ourselves even through that relationship. So there are constant fights and shifts and all of that kind of stuff until we become that. And really it's about who is the person that you want to experience this type of growth with. Because every relationship is going to come with different conflicts and shifts and growths and maturity. Who do you feel you can go through that with?
Yeah, this whole conversation stems from what level of relationship we're at as well.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Because you just getting around and dating is very different than you looking for your life partner.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so you're willing to make certain adjustments when you're ready to find your forever person that you might not be willing to make when you're out dating.
And you know what? And that's the difference. And that's the difference there, because you're unwilling to make certain adjustments for certain people because they're just not the one for you to make that level of adjustment for. You know what I mean? So that's true.
And I think that's something that we should look at when it comes to accountability. I want us to get to a place where we're holding ourselves accountable in that way, though. Like, if you understand that you've come to the conclusion that this is not somebody you're willing to do those things for, why are you wasting time? Why are you wasting their time?
I want to answer that.
Go ahead.
Because it's so hard, because you want to make sure that you're making the right decision. And sometimes when it's a good person, not that they haven't done any wrong, they're just not right for you. You make excuses to figure it out.
That person's life is being adjusted too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I don't respect it.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't respect it because I've been in situations. I've been in situations where I've been the person doing it.
Right.
When I was younger, and then I've been the person on the other side of it, and I'm like, yo, I gave you this amount of time of my life. I can't get that back.
Right. Now dragging it. Okay. Now what you're saying this time of your life, you're saying somebody dragging something for years, knowing they don't want to be there, is different. But
the same way we know we want somebody, we know when we don't. We gotta stop. We gotta stop playing semantics.
You know when you don't. You know when you don't.
We know.
You know when you don't.
Nobody wants to admit it because then you have to make drastic decisions when you have
and
to
you know
make
what I would have to agree with
you
because I'm thinking about my decisions, and when I knew for sure that this is not what I want, I had to make the move. No matter how much it hurt or hurt the other person, I had to make the move. But it takes is that what you call that, selflessness, or just not being selfish?
A little of both.
A little of both, yeah, to do that. And also care about the person, because real love is also caring about that person's heart and what you're doing to them. And sometimes, like, love hurts, whereas, but what I'm going with that is, if you have to leave someone because it just doesn't work for you, you know what I mean? Like, I love you, but I have to go. So this may hurt, but this is out of love that I'm doing this, that I have to go. And I've had to do that
you gotta handle people with care. You know what I mean? And sometimes it feels like, Dad, I don't want to hurt them, but you're making it more hurtful.
And you're prolonging the healing process.
The hurt, because they're going to get hurt regardless.
Yeah, that's life.
But you rather them get hurt and leave still respecting you for how you handled them.
That's right.
Versus playing with them.
Right.
Taking up their time and space. And then they looking at you like, you knew this.
Yeah.
You knew this. Now we can't even be, like, I can't even
because I could have been doing other stuff. And I'm over here feeling it. I could have had other opportunities, and I'm spending my time with you. You're right.
Somebody fully invested, and they don't know that you're not fully invested.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You gotta do your part. Yeah. Like, that's where accountability comes in. You know what I mean? So I would say when it comes down to the level of relationship that you're not willing to make those adjustments for, that's a telltale.
Yeah, that's a telltale. And you know what, a lot of times it's not just one person. Sometimes people are holding each other hostage in relationships when neither one of them are happy. Neither one of you are growing. You're actually hurting everyone's growth, period. Messing up the journey, and y'all are committed to that. Y'all committed to messing up the journey, and it hurts both of your lives. You know, so what do you say about situations like that?
Well, when I think about that, I think that falls under the umbrella when they say that you attract what you are, right? I don't think that that's 100% true, but I think it's true in certain situations, right? And so two people who are not willing to do the hard thing. connect with each other so they can feel what it feels like. Somebody's going to get a lesson from that.
Yep, and both of y'all going to be lazy together, but it's also going to show up in your life.
You know what I mean? Yeah, so you're getting the lesson by way of dealing with somebody who has the same maybe shortcomings or to give you the information.
Yeah.
You know?
But if you're not caring for your crop, which is your life, then you're not going to get any fruit. And it's like, you comfortable with that?
Yeah. So when we go to the seriousness of relationships, right? And we're saying, okay, I don't want to be single anymore. I want to do something, get to something more stable, right?
Yep.
I want to do something more stable. I want to build with somebody. There's a lot that needs to be adjusted. Your individual habits and routines have to adjust.
Yeah.
Now, I don't use the word compromise.
Yes, that's good.
And I don't use the word compromise because then it gives a sense of losing something. But you're supposed to be gaining something, right? A relationship is supposed to add to, not take away from your life. So I say adjustments. And the reason I say adjustments is because in order for two people to join, obviously some adjustments need to be made. But I don't think you need to lose anything.
Right.
I think the adjustments need to come with agreements within the agreement. Right. A relationship is an agreement.
Right.
We're going to do this
between
together,
two people. We agreed on that.
Yep. We're going to do this together. Right. And then within that space, there's other agreements that need to take place to help this be sustainable. So if I'm used to listening to loud music early in the morning, but you like to listen, you like to serenity in the morning.
Right.
How do we get somewhere that I'm comfortable with, you comfortable with? Nobody's losing anything. Right. But we have something we can agree to.
Absolutely. And how does that work? That's basically mediating your own thing.
Exactly.
Yep. And then so with that, those are called joint decisions, right? So you're not just focused on yourself, but you also focus on the needs of your partner and taking those into account. And that's something that must, I mean, that's one of the key things that has to happen when in a relationship. It's no longer a singular focus. It's us now. So even how you spend your own money, it affects your relationship. It affects the home. So how are you doing that now? How are you thinking about your habits and things, and how you think about how you're budgeting and how it affects the greater whole?
And I know that people are going to say, well, how about we don't live with each other? It still affects the other person. Because when one is not spending responsibly, we look to our partners to be that balance, right? So we hold each other down. If I don't have it, you have it.
Right.
So if you're spending irresponsibly and I'm responsible with my money, now you're taking away versus us being able to
being there for
and help.
That's right. And then who's there for me if I fall? You know what I mean? And like you said, you taking away. Now I'm carrying both of us. You know what I mean? So absolutely. Another thing, the interdependence thing is you go from avoiding being vulnerable because with people you're just dating, you're not really opening up like that, to being comfortable emotionally to share with your partner about your stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's why in relationships, I love using the word partner. I know a lot of times it's been used in gay relationships, but partner, because you really have to own, like, this is a partnership. So what does that partnership look like? We're partners. So if you're my partner, there's certain expectations there, and what are those? You know what I mean? So, and that's the difference between being single and being in a relationship. You now have a partner.
Because I had children early, I always had that understanding. Yeah. Because when you have children, you ain't think about yourself.
You
it's
can't.
Like, all right, how does this affect them?
Right.
If I take a later meeting, am I missing this with them? Am I, you know what I mean? So you start thinking like that. So in relationships, I come with that anyway. And if you're still trying to maintain individuality, you're not ready for a relationship. Just stay there and figure that out first. Stay there until you're ready to join with someone. Because it shouldn't feel like I'm not a child. Right. If someone's saying, yo, check in at this time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
For safety issues.
Right.
For... we had plans. I want to make sure.
Right.
These things are necessary when you're bringing more than one person together.
Absolutely.
We have to take account that you have things going on. I have things going on. We all have thoughts that we don't know of.
Yep.
So if in a split second you're like, oh, I think I want to stop at this store.
Right.
But you told this person we meeting at this time.
That's right. You don't have time for that.
You have to make sure that this is something that is okay with them.
That's right.
So you might still go, but now it's like, yo, I was thinking about going to the store. I know we're supposed to meet at this time. Would that be cool, or do you need me to come straight to you? Taking consideration of others is a big part of a relationship.
Yep. But I want to go back to the vulnerability point that I was making. Reason being is because sometimes you could be in a relationship with someone, but you're not comfortable sharing yourself with that person, in terms of the different things that may impact you, your triggers and stuff like that.
That's wild, to be honest.
I agree.
think that's really wild. I had a conversation a couple of years back because someone I was talking to was saying they didn't feel comfortable with discussions. And I said, yo, you're sharing your body with this person.
Why don't you just look like that?
I don't, because that is wild. I think it's weird.
Right.
I have things that I'm uncomfortable with too. So I have moments of discomfort, but I fight through discomfort because when we sharing our bodies, that is the biggest thing you can share. Not just physically, but spiritually. So when you start saying, oh, I can't reveal this to the person I'm sleeping with, I can't ask this person questions,
right.
I don't feel comfortable with this, why are you intimate with them?
Right.
Why are you intimate?
Consistent.
Intimacy should not come prior to that level of comfort.
Right. But you say that, but what about when you're single and you have and you are sexually active?
So. Well, I'm at a different level of life. There's no such thing as light sex.
Right. No.
There's nothing light about that exchange.
No.
And even if it's somebody you're not really that interested in, you're not gonna get caught up.
Right.
It's a transferring of energy.
Absolutely.
It's a transferring, and when we say energy, bad energy, good energy, it's all of these different energies and connections that people have. There's a transfer of that.
Absolutely.
I take that extremely seriously.
Yeah.
So when I make that statement, I'm making that statement from that standpoint.
Okay. I think you brought something about communication, or if you didn't, it made me think of it about avoiding conflict or difficult situations to being having respectful communications even when it's hard. And when you're single and stuff, there's a lot of effort you don't have to put in, but you still have to have respect for people. But 100% when you're in a relationship, you got to have the difficult conversations, and you don't wait until you're engaged. You don't wait until you're married in order to start figuring out where this person stands on certain things. Like to get engaged and then figure out your mate doesn't want to have children, or that whatever. You know what I mean? Like the difficult
go deeper
stuff.
in that too, right? So we say have the hard conversations, and we ask questions, and we have talks, and we don't recognize that we're not asking the right questions to get to the root of what we're trying to discuss. Like, oh, do you want to get married?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we both want to get married, right? Yeah. But then, what does that look like?
Right.
What does that mate look like? How does that mate behave? Right? What makes your forever relationship look sustainable to you?
For you,
You know what I mean? It's deeper context within the questioning. I want to make sure when I'm saying, like, have the hard conversations, we give insight to that.
Right.
Because you can always think that you're asking all the right questions.
But you're still keeping it baseline.
But you're on the surface. And so when stuff start popping out, you feel bamboozled. Because you like, I asked you. But you asked this.
Right.
We here now.
Yep.
And so when we say have the hard conversations, I mean go deep.
Yeah.
I mean get to the depth.
Yeah.
Get uncomfortable a little bit.
Yep.
Both of you should be a little bit uncomfortable.
You should be.
And work through that together.
Yep. And then as those things come up, because the more you get to know each other, the more the conversation changes, and you get to see, wow, you thought that, for example, this person had great relationship with family, and they really don't. How does that impact them? You get to realize what their upbringing was like, and you're like, oh, this is why they're this way. And then you got to have those conversations, and it's important to have it. You got to get deep before it gets deep. You
know what? Another thing is, you just made me think of it when you said, having they're thinking that their family relationships is good, right? I know a lot of women often ask guys, how's your relationship with your mother, right? And it's like, oh, if they don't have a good relationship with their mother, I can't do it. But you got to go deeper. Right. You don't know what kind of mother that person has. Right. So it's not just do you have a good relationship with somebody. Right. It's what was the inner workings of that relationship. So how do we get here? Right. If it's good, what made it good? Right. So you know exactly how they like to interact and what they enjoy. Right. If it's not a good relationship, what made it that? Because just because someone doesn't have a good relationship with their parent doesn't make it their fault. Right? Yeah. It doesn't make it their fault. Right. It doesn't mean that they don't want a good relationship with their parent. It doesn't mean that the circumstances surrounding the relationship allowed for it. Right. You know what I mean? So it's deeper questions that need to be asked before you come to judgment. Right. Good point. Also with that is also understanding what the impact was. Like when I think about your personal episode, and I said, okay, actually I think we asked each other that question on the impact that our upbringing had on us. So it's not just knowing, but what do you think
what did that develop in you? Are you able to identify that? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think folks are saying that, oh yeah, you had a bad relationship with your mother, so it's your fault. But it's like, the assumption is, if you don't have respect for your mother, then you won't have respect for me,
but
right?
That's my point.
Right.
So if you're assuming I don't have respect
you just
for my
disrespectful.
mother, yeah. You don't
yeah.
understand the dynamics.
Right.
You come into a conclusion without having all of the information.
Right.
And the information changes the conclusion.
Yeah,
you know what I
that's
mean?
right. Another big thing is us against each other or us against the problem. I feel like a lot of us make the mistake of when things get hard is us against each other. You know what I mean? As opposed to say, okay, this is the problem. This is how we need to deal with this problem. All of a sudden, y'all become enemies.
Yeah,
you know?
and that goes back to what you were saying as far as the team,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
We have to
Partners.
acknowledge that we're partners, right? We have to acknowledge, because there's a lot of, everything that we're speaking of, that's why I keep saying, like, what are we doing, right? There's certain things that are just simple.
Right.
That if these things are not in place, then you're wasting each other's time.
Right.
Right?
Right.
If you're going into a partnership, if you're going into a relationship where you feel like you are competing with, where you feel like it's all about you, not about your mate, if you're neglecting the whole, making decisions for the self, what are we doing?
Yep.
Right? And so when you say, like, yo, going into it, understanding we have a goal. We have a common goal.
Right.
We have a common goal. So how are we going to get
together? What are the parts that each other plays? Yeah.
How can we work through this as a team to get to the healthier side of things?
Absolutely.
When I have these discussions, I probably feel so absolute because I am. And the reason I speak in such absolutes is because there is no gradient there.
Right.
There's certain things that are they need to be.
They need to be. I
These
agree with
things
that.
need to be.
Right.
And when we're speaking of the health of,
right.
There's so many different ways to do things, but there's not so many healthy ways to do things.
Absolutely. Agree.
You know what I mean?
Agree. So speaking of healthy ways to do things and stuff, let's talk about the surface stuff that could get deep is where is the adjustment in your freedoms and boundaries, flirting, hanging out a lot. And like, for example, say it's one of your people's birthday and like, it's my birthday or April. The whole April is my birthday. That don't mean you going out every, you know what I'm saying? That don't mean you going out every or April.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about,
let's
be real here. Or overly friendly. I think sometimes.
What does that mean?
Overly friendly? I don't know. Let's talk about it. And I may not put my foot in my mouth here. I think I'm going to just bring it up and let you talk about it. It always, for me, it always goes back to the foundation, the beginning, right? Really knowing your partner. Getting to know your partner.
Stop this surface level connectivity. You're not really connecting there. The connection comes from the depth, right? Learning each other's nuances, seeing how each other operate.
Right.
My ex used to be like, I can tell when you're on the phone with a feminine woman.
Yeah.
Because you speak differently.
Right.
Right. So
what do you do about that?
I don't do anything. I'm myself.
Okay.
This is the thing, and this is why I asked you, what does that mean?
You think that's okay?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's who I am.
So it's okay, like, no, I saw for myself with feminine women, and then... Yeah?
Like, she never said, oh, I see that you flirt.
Right.
She said, I can always tell.
You handle it different.
You handle ladies differently than you do men, than you do...
It's a different energy.
Yeah, it's a different energy.
Right.
So she's able to see that.
Right.
Right? And I think that's important, to be able to identify who people are prior to
and understanding
the integrating of the world.
Let me tell you something. So I had an issue, right? Because I felt that my girl was that she's a friendly person, and I wouldn't say I'm as friendly as she is, and I'm not used to that. I like girls that's a little standoffish. That's my thing. I don't feel approachable to people, and I realized, I said, yo, you can't make it up. The way people gravitate towards her. I'm like, who were you in another life or something like that? Maybe you should have been a social worker or something like that. Because one time we had to break up a fight outside. It was this guy that had this girl in a headlock.
That's crazy.
Right?
That's crazy.
Outside my building. I'm like, yo, get him out the headlock. And he's so upset, and she's still trying to act tough. I'm like, yo, I just saved you just now. I'm not going to stop him next time. Like, calm down. Right? And I'm talking to her. And then he just went to her and started crying on her shoulder, talking about how his mother did, and and all of that. And then
other times, healing spirits.
Yeah, and another time we talking all in the family thing, and this guy just sit there and just start talking about his whole life, and it happens in the street, it'll happen on the train, and I'm like, yo, people just, yeah, and I like people. She's like, baby, you'll never guess what happened today, and it'll be one of those kind of stories, and you can't make it up. So I'm like, I can't have an issue. I can't restrict that energy as long as it's respectful, which I never felt disrespected. I just wasn't used to that.
What I thought of when you said it was, I'm like, imagine somebody like, oh, you be laughing with people way too much.
Right, yeah. You can't.
Aisha.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my personality.
Yeah.
It's probably what attracted you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So now
all of a sudden I gotta
shut it off.
Tone it down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a thin line. That's why I asked, what does that mean? Overly friendly.
Right.
You know what I mean? Are they crossing lines, or are you insecure and you're putting your insecurities on them? That's very different.
Yep. If you think insecure and discomfort are two different things, because I don't think I felt an insecurity. I felt it was foreign to me.
The lack of comfort is a form of insecurity.
Okay, let's call it level 1.
You know, it's not. Yeah, I was about to say it's levels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's levels.
But you can't shut down who your people innately are to other people, and you can't dim people's light and dim people's shine, because everybody's light is different. Everybody's purposes are different. And again, if we have those boundaries there, and it's not secrecies, and those things are not turned into flirtations, then you gotta let people be themselves. My aunt taught me that a long time ago.
I think it's good to tell, like, for you to be able to tell her, like, yeah, I was you know, I'm not used to that. I was a little uncomfortable.
Right.
It's good because you're allowing them to get to know you on a deeper level.
Right.
But not create unstable environment by making it an agenda to stop them from being who they are, right? Because I think it's important, the honesty of a relationship, right? When you come together in a serious relationship, if it's going to be serious and if it's going to be lifelong, the facades, it don't even make sense, because at some point you got to be yourself.
We're gonna know. At some point you got to be yourself.
At some point you got to be yourself.
That's right.
So being honest with yourself, being honest with your partner, being open, those are things that come along with the seriousness of moving forward into a relationship that may have been different when you were single.
Absolutely. Because one thing that you brought up, like you said, was insecurities. And that request screamed insecure. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times we put our insecurities on our partners and feel like it's their duty to do something about it or make some adjustments to something that's already cracked and it's cracked, it's broken, it's not healed. So that healing, maybe I could talk about, instead of creating an issue in your relationship, hopefully someone is healed enough or has enough emotional intelligence to say, you know what, this is something we got to talk about. You know what I mean? Because no one likes the word insecure. You see, I ain't like it just now. I'm like, well, level 1 insecure. Nobody likes that, right? But the thing is, it's a thing.
Well, listen, that's another thing that I want to make sure that we're being clear on, right? With words, right? There's levels to everything, right? But not only is there levels to everything, we got to understand the dynamic of these words. So I can have insecurities and not be an insecure person. Right. But we also need to understand that when we're dealing with each other, we can create insecurities within each other.
Yes.
But when I say that, I mean, I hear conversations constantly with couples who are like, she's so insecure, he's so insecure.
Yeah.
And then you ask them questions about the fidelity in their relationship.
Right. I only cheated two times.
I only cheated once. She can't get over it. I only cheated.
Right.
He left me and he did it to me first.
Right.
It's like you're creating a space where the person don't have anything to stand on. You created that insecurity. You can't create an insecurity and then label somebody insecure.
So do you think they should be
in that space?
So do you think the person that brought the insecurity in the relationship be held accountable?
Absolutely.
And has something to do for
Absolutely. That? Fix what you break.
Right. Fix what you
break. It goes back to my like what I say every time. Fix what you break. If a person is not willing to get to a better place, then y'all should just split.
Right.
However, you cannot say, I want to continue this relationship with this person, and you're not willing to do what it takes to make them understand that you really want to be there.
Exactly. And it may take a little extra effort and extra work.
It's going to take extra effort.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's going to take extra effort. It's going to take more assistance and assuring the person.
And empathy.
It's going to take that.
Right, because what happens is when something didn't impact you, you don't feel it the same way as the person that was impacted. So you're like, damn, they can't just get over it, or you're going to forgive me or not. a person may forgive you, but over time, the impact lessens. And if you decided to stay there, then you decided to deal with that and understand you're not going to feel the same emotional attachment to the pain because you weren't the one in pain.
That's always the case. The person who is inflicting the pain always feels like you're doing too much.
Right.
But the person that received it,
you're not doing enough. Yeah.
It's
you
like,
got a lot of nerve.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Right? So you
cameraman agreed with us. He said.
When an action is connected to a principle that somebody holds in a high regard, the devastation is different. Right? You did something that takes away the trust.
Right.
That makes me look at you differently, like your integrity is questioned.
Right.
Now, it's not just that you did this. I'm questioning who I chose completely.
Yep.
If I didn't think that you were capable of doing such a thing because the principles that we said we aligned in would not create this, that's a different kind of wound.
I got a piece of advice then. Because when I think about the work that I do in the workshops and stuff around effective communication, relationship building, one of the exercises we do is about values. And we talked about this, I think probably in season one, right? A few of our shows. And talking about values, what are the values we hold most dear? What are the things that we value? And maybe that's a question, not maybe, that is a question,
that's definitely a question
that we should be asking our partners and understanding what their values are, because then you can understand who they are, why their reactions are the way they are around certain things, and you can't say a person is extra. And this is part of their foundation. These are the things that hold true for them and how they carry themselves in their everyday lives. And I bet you many of us do not clearly understand what our partner's values are.
I asked that during the dating process, and I would tell everybody to ask those questions. The reason I say this is because we're getting to know people, right? As you're getting to know people, you have no choice but to go by their word.
That's it.
Right?
Right.
But we all had moments where we felt bamboozled at some point. You said this was you, but this didn't seem to be you. It's not just words and it's not just actions. It's the relation between the words and the actions. You get someone to tell you who they believe they are.
Right.
And then you watch their actions to see if that aligns with who they said they are. And if the two don't align,
you got a problem.
You have some decisions to make.
You have some decisions to make. That's it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to bring up is inconsistency and reliability. You touched on it already about if your mate is waiting for you here and then you decide to make the stop without, and that's any relationship period, right? You can make changes at the drop of a dime when you're on your own. If you don't have children to consider, if you don't have a mate to consider, and things.
If it's not on somebody else's timeline.
If it's not on somebody else's timeline. But when in a committed relationship, being flaky, being unpredictable, like you said, not keeping your word, showing up when you say and keeping your promises, then you're not building trust with that person. And a lot of us are very comfortable being inconsistent and being flaky, and that hurts relationships.
Relationships are built on the foundation of security.
Security, yep.
If I can't trust you, how can I be secure about this relationship?
Yep.
If I can't count on you, how can I be secure about this relationship?
That's right.
If what you say isn't what you do, then how can I trust that you're going to show up when you say you're going to show up? Now you're creating an insecurity.
Security. That's right.
Right? So a lot of times people are putting this title on others, like, oh, insecure, oh my God, oh my God.
That's right.
And they're creating the dynamic for that thing to be.
Yep.
And it's not fair.
Yep. And I think also if somebody is insecure about some things, if you love that person, I don't think you should dig a hole in that insecurity and be like, oh, you're so insecure and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a conversation.
Find out where it comes from and help them to figure out how they're going to get through it. Once you find a person that you really try to do this with, the quick exit should not be your thought process anyway. It should be the working through.
Right.
And
first.
if you and you should only be choosing somebody who's willing to do the working through, or the relationship's not sustainable anyway.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of work in a relationship.
Right. But sometimes you don't know if you chose somebody that's willing to do the work through. But you should be able to do the work. You should want to do the work through with that person, or they not it.
I need to know who I'm dealing with before I sign on.
Yeah, before I sign on.
I'm not doing that no more. That's youthful stuff.
That's youthful stuff.
I'm talking about we
mature
doing
shit.
this mature shit now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
When he's younger, it's go with the flow.
Yeah.
When you get to adulthood, you understand that that's not sustainable. Right. Throughout your years, you should be gathering information.
Yeah.
You should be identifying what these things equate to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We all do it.
Right.
But people seem to create fear from it. So we like, oh, that hurt me.
Yeah.
As soon as we see that again, I'm out of here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We need to utilize that and stop being cowards and say, okay, I got this information from here, this information from here. This is what it equates to.
Right.
Okay, how do we work that? Is this something I can work through?
Yes.
Is this the type of person that I want to build with?
Right.
Now that I'm seeing these, you know what I mean?
Right.
There's a lot of questions you must answer for yourself.
Right.
Before you start answering questions as a unit.
Right, exactly. And at the end of the day, if how a person operates is not for you, then you have a decision to make. And it's not about trying to shift that person or make them be this thing. And that's where the grown stuff comes in. You realize that you can't change people, and it's not your job. That means that person is not for you. This type of personality trait could be very cool for somebody else, or the way somebody likes to dress, and it's like, nah, I like a more classy. I like, or the way they carry it. If it's not for you, and it's okay.
Younger, you start shape-shifting a little bit to make people more comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to always adjust the things that aren't healthy about
Right,
you.
that's not working for you.
But the things that are healthy to make you comfortable, I'm not subtracting any of those things.
Right, absolutely.
At all.
That's right.
That's not for any level of relationship.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And your goal is to choose what you are attracted to, not just physically.
Right.
Right? There's a lot of people that's like, yo,
and you
that
keeping
look
it.
good.
Yeah, and you keeping it for that.
But you don't like the way this person talks, and now you want to change how they talk. You don't like the way this person dressed, so you want to change how they dress.
Right.
Find a package.
Right. Find a package
for you.
Oh, I gotta say that.
So you can enjoy each other. Right. When you start talking about trying to build the character of others, that's their job.
That's their job, not
that's
yours.
Their job. So when you get into these serious relationships, it's not a Build-A-Bear.
Right, it's not a build. Yeah, it's not a Build-A-Bear.
It's not a Build-A-Bear.
Exactly, and sometimes we get caught up in that. I had a conversation with one of my cousins. She was like, I don't think you ever find the perfect person. I said, I think you absolutely can find the perfect person for you. Right? Because nobody's just a perfect person, because what is that? You know what I mean? There's going to be flaws, but are those flaws that you can manage? Like, these flaws are not terrible to me. I could deal with these flaws. But somebody else is like, those flaws drive me crazy. So you can absolutely find the perfect person for you, but if you know who you are.
You have to know who you are. That's the bottom line for all of it. In every conversation we have, it's really just understanding self.
Yep.
Understanding who you are in spirit, how that translates to the world.
Yep.
What triggers you.
Yep.
Why it triggers you.
Yep.
Understanding your bandwidth for what you're willing to adjust and what you're not willing to adjust.
Yep.
Understanding that you are responsible for your actions.
Yep.
Even in a union.
Yep.
Your partner's not responsible for your actions, right?
Like, cause you did. Oh, but I'm not. But the way you responded is yours.
You are responsible for all of that. Relationships are grown-up shit, and there's levels to relationships. All of these different levels ask for a different level of seriousness.
Yep. Yep.
But all of them are only sustainable from the very foundational principles that are there. So, if you're doing the work to be great for yourself, you'll be prepared for a relationship.
And it feels so good when you're doing the work to feel great for yourself, and all that you just said about, like, one thing you always say is self-actualization. When you get to that point, it feels so good. And then, the decision making comes. It's not that it's just easy, but it's easier.
Yeah, it's easier. I mean,
and it's logical.
Once you know yourself, you know what you're going to say yes and no to.
Yep.
It's not a tug of war.
Nah.
Of like, I don't want to say. No.
Nah.
I need you to know that this is a no for me.
Right. Like, and
you know
I'm
what
not.
I mean?
Yeah.
I don't feel any way about it. You shouldn't feel any way about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is just not the direction I'm trying
It's
to
knowing
go.
your deal breakers. It's knowing your deal breakers. Yep.
Yep.
Right.
That was a great discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's what I appreciate.
Yeah, that was good. Layers.
Yep.
Mad layers.
Yep.
I'm Mahogany.
I'm Ish.
And this is Culture Currency.
But culture
is the value.
Make sure to like, subscribe,
comment, and share.
Yes. Welcome to season 3, y'all.